when we look at a project, we will scope out the works, and that is all the works we know the client wants to do and we need to do to a building, and that defines our schedule. And what happens then is that we go under contract and we form an agreement with a client on the basis of that scope of works. And a variation is any change to that agreed scope. So that agreed scope has a quantum of money, and then the variation can either be, we have different titles for them. So it could be a client-led variation. So like, actually, I'd like to make the extension bigger, or I would like to add an extra bathroom, or I would like to change the specification of the tap from this to this. It's a change. But they've led that change. Or it might be a building-led variation. So it might be we open up the floor and suddenly we find out all the wall plates, which is where all what the floor joists sit on, are rotten, and we need to replace them. We hadn't accounted for it.
And that, just to interject there, that happens quite a lot because we work on old buildings.
Yeah. And
they often have a couple of these gremlins hiding. We often try and open up as much as possible before we start a project. So before we start on site, we'll do trial pits, and we'll also knock holes in walls to try and determine whether there is rot or deterioration that needs to be considered in this main body of works. But sometimes, in fact, more often than not, there's hidden gremlins, right?
Yeah, but from our experience, we know where those gremlins are hiding. So we'll put money in for changing the wall plates or other things, and then also we always ensure that we recommend to our clients they run what we call a contingency fund, and that is a pot of money that you need to consider as part of your budget, but it's unallocated budget. But you do need to run a contingency for the unknowns, and that's why it's there.
With the best will in the world, like we've had projects where they're listed buildings, and we've done a strip out where we've taken some walls with permission down, and we've been arguing with a listed building officer for like 9 months as why this isn't an original wall, and then we'll find out that it's a still wall because there was a fire 40 years ago in the house, and nobody could have identified that. No matter how many little holes you drill anywhere, you just can't find these things out. We do as much as we can do to protect you, but there are the odd corners.
And I think our typical jobs are old Victorian homes, or if not older, so that's where you need that 10 to 20% contingency. But if it's a new build, and there's far less probably unknown, so the contingency is probably 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on the brief as well and the scope.
And we know from walking into a property as well, we know how generally its age, how it's been built, what condition it's in, what condition its neighbours are in, if there's been any movement. There's so much that we can piece together from our history and our experience from the past 15 years. We can kind of identify where the target areas are.
And I think the key question, if you're looking to appoint an architect or a design delivery team, is to not only go and see some projects that have been built, but ask the client, what was the budget that you agreed and the contingency, and did they deliver the project within that, that sum and the contingency?
And also get them
that's
to be
what we aim to
transparent
do.
on variations and what typical things come up. That's a really good question. And I would also go and see the contractors, not finished jobs, the ones that are in progress.
Absolutely.
And see how they're being built, and that robustness. And
we always offer clients the opportunity to speak to potential clients, to historic clients, and we don't edit that conversation or sit between them. We just go and have a chat to X or Y, and they'll give you a candid view on how we've delivered our projects. And as Pip said, we'll take clients to jobs at various stages so they can see not only the finished glossy product, but also all the stuff that goes into it and how neatly coordinated and put together everything is behind the scenes as it is, in front of the finish.
So to summarise, there are 2 types of variations that can impact the overall budget. The first is client-led, which is anything you add or change during the process. The second is building-led. This means anything we discover during the works, such as rotten floor timbers, that we couldn't have known about beforehand. That's why it's so important to have a budget contingency, which for an existing building will be between 10 to 20% and generally much lower on a new build.